Hi everyone, and welcome to the Emotional Intelligence Pawdcast. I'm your host, Sandra Thompson, founder of EI Evolution, and I am super excited to take you on this incredible journey. We're going to be exploring the transformative world of emotional intelligence and empathy, guided by some truly remarkable humans and their fantastic four-legged friends. In each episode, we'll dive into inspiring and heartwarming stories about our beloved canine companions. We'll discover the unique and magical bonds we share with our dogs and uncover the profound lessons they teach us about understanding and managing our emotions. From tales of loyalty and love to moments of learning and growth, our furry friends have so much to offer when it comes to enhancing our emotional intelligence. We'll also discuss practical tips and insights on how to cultivate empathy and emotional awareness in our daily lives, inspired by the natural wisdom of our dogs. So sit back and relax, maybe even with your playful pup by your side, and join us for an enriching experience that celebrates the incredible ways dogs help us connect more deeply with ourselves and others. Welcome to the Emotional Intelligence Pawdcast. We are in for quite an adventure, I think, actually. I know my next guest from way back, and in fact we've got stories of all sorts of canine creatures that have appeared in our lives. So Joe, how are you? How's Nellie?
I'm very good, thank you. It's nice to be here. And Nellie's just down on the floor here, just really chilled. You can probably try and bribe her up if you like.
For those of you who are joining us on the video, Joe has got some treats, so we will be exercising those shortly so that we can get Nellie on camera. But Joe, it's great to see you here. Tell us a little bit about you before we move on to the story of Nellie.
Well, I live in the green Chiltern Hills and I work for Forestry England. And Forestry England is a government agency and it's responsible for looking after the woodlands that are publicly owned. So for people, for nature and for the climate. And my role is all to do with recreation. So it's all around engaging people with those forests, giving them the opportunity to get out into our amazing green spaces for well-being and just general recreation.
So the amazing thing about that job is that I imagine you can probably take Nellie everywhere and anywhere you go. I mean, is that the case?
Yep, it's a very dog-friendly organisation. We have working dogs in the organisation because we have a wildlife team, so we have proper working dogs, and then we also have dog companions. So it's great. It's great to engage with people in the forest. It's a great way to get talking, and obviously, they for the most part are very well behaved. So it just again gets us to help to share that responsible behaviour a little bit more widely. Doesn't always work, but.
So tell me help me this. You got working dogs. So what, you got dogs walking around with Forestry England little jackets patrolling the joint or like warming people up, or what are they doing? What's their job role?
Well, the wildlife rangers have them as a tool for their job, really. So they just help the wildlife rangers in what they do in and around the forest. So they're paid for by their organisation, so they're technically members of staff. So they get their their medical expenses and their food paid for. But they're a really really important tool for those wildlife rangers to make sure that they can do their jobs properly. But for the most part, the rest of us just have them as companions.
And so a companion being just coming along, keeping you company, making sure you take breaks, and generally providing some chill factor, depending on the breed, of course.
Yes, yeah, and it's really lovely in the organisation. One of the things that I've been really lucky about having a dog is that reminder to go and take a break. Because if you don't, they will remind you. You'll either get a paw on the knee, you'll get a little tap. I've got colleagues where I'm in meetings with them and they feel like the break hasn't come when it's meant to, and they appear on the back. Generally become disruptive, go from not realising they're there to disrupting the meeting, but. Yeah, that well-being element is fantastic, and all of the colleagues in my office really appreciate Nellie being there. I've had meetings. We've got a piece of work going on at the moment with a software company, and they don't have dogs in their offices. And every single time they come, it's like one of the things is, well, we want lunch and we want tea and coffee, and can the dog be in the room as well, just for that kind of like well-being element. So
it's important, isn't it? Because I've been listening to some other dog podcasts, and I heard something recently about bring your dog to work day,
and how many more organisations are doing a little bit more. Originally, I think they were like, no pets, this building isn't any good for pets. And now, because people have been working from home or they're hybrid or they've got a dog, they're trying to do a bit more to ensure that places are more pet friendly, because they recognise the balance that dogs bring in that environment. I mean, what do you say to that?
I think it's excellent. I mean, it doesn't work everywhere. I understand that, and it depending on your job role, it may not be safe. There may be, health and safety implications of doing it. But I think wherever you can, it's great. It's great for the owner. It gives flexibility. So I work across the country, and the ability for me to be able to take Nellie there in the background with me. You can see she just sits nicely on a bed for the most part, despite being a collie. So it just brings that flexibility to me. I can either work from home, I can work from the office, I can work from other offices, and it just makes it easier. And I think I have a better work-life balance because of it, especially that taking breaks, because you have to make sure she gets fed and she gets a walk, which means I get fed and I get my walk too. So
There's a couple of things on that though, isn't there? Because I know that I have been guilty of sitting at my desk and it's gone from light to dark, and before I know it, hours have passed. So we're not necessarily looking after ourselves, but we absolutely will look after our pet and respond to them. I mean, that I think in itself is quite fascinating, that they bring this consciousness to our day. And I think the other thing that you were talking about bringing dogs in, and it not always being success, or not always being appropriate. Could you imagine bringing a dog into a bakery with sausage rolls? That will be a vacuum cleaner exercise, wouldn't it, I guess?
yes, I think there are definitely certain situations where they're not going to work and it's just going to be chaos. But yeah, I think for the most part, they are genuinely a positive. If you can make it work, they bring it not just to you and not just to the owner, but other people that share the office space as well. And,
Yeah.
maybe somebody could take, your dog out for a walk. I've certainly had it before where I've been in back-to-back meetings and a colleague has taken Nellie out for me, even if it's just a quick wander around the yard. But I think it's much more that, and it shouldn't really be this way, but Nellie is more important, and I have to take the walk for her, not for me. And I think if I didn't have her, I know there are certainly days where I would have just worked all the way through from one end to the other without stopping and having that break. And like you
Yeah.
say, it's not good for productivity. It's not good for your efficiency. You do need to have a little bit of a downtime to make sure that when you come back to whatever it is you're working on, you
Yeah.
focus and you're there and you're present in that moment, focused on that task. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's key
brilliant.
really.
So let's hear now a little bit more about Nellie, who, if you are watching this little video, you can see that she's kind of taken a little position in her bed just behind Joe. She's a very good dog. So tell us a little bit about Nellie. What's her backstory, Joe?
So Nellie's a rescue pup. So I think we've pretty much in my family forever, we've always had rescue dogs or dogs that have sort of come unexpectedly. So she was a rescue. She was originally from Ireland. So she's an Irish dog and she came with a passport, which is a first for me. We don't know the whole background, but she was a failed working dog. So she had been on a farm in Ireland, and I suspect she just was a little bit anxious about the sheep, so probably couldn't do the job quite right. There were elements of the job that she's picked up and she's remembered all the way through, but there are elements where she obviously didn't do the job right. I think she wasn't confident enough to stand up to herself with her siblings, and then obviously that meant that she couldn't do the job. So she was surrendered to the Dogs Trust, who brought her over on the ferry to Loughborough, and I picked her up from Loughborough. So she was about 2, I think, when I got her, but obviously we're not 100% sure of the timings there, but that's
So,
that's where she came.
so she was a working dog, but because of her, I'm gonna put words into your mouth. So because of her anxieties, because perhaps the other dogs in the pack were more dominant, she wasn't able to undertake the task that the farm needed her to do, which then meant that the dog trust picked her up and then rehomed her. Is that her story?
Yeah, that's her story. So, when I first got her, she had a whole pile of challenges to deal with, and they were all around anxiety around dogs. So, she didn't
Right.
want to eat when there was another dog around. She didn't want to drink water. She wouldn't even do her toilet breaks. So, when I first got her, I had to take her home to our garden every single day at lunchtime so that she could eat her food in peace and go to a toilet in a place that she felt safe. I mean, we're we're worlds on from that now. But it was difficult at the start, and you could see that there was those kind of traumas from sort of day one that we had to overcome as part of her training and getting her into a sort of social life as a pet rather than as a working dog.
So this is more than just having someone join your home, your family. This is intense patience and consideration and consistency, and I'm going to just say just pure grit and determination on your part, Joe, surely.
Yeah, it was. I think the thing that she's taught me is that every big journey, every big adventure starts with small steps. And I think that's a kind of very great comparison in terms of work, in that you can't do everything in a day. You know, you've got some really big things, they seem insurmountable. You know, I remember one Christmas, I wasn't in the best place mentally, and my focus was on the dog and trying to get the dog to a place where I thought, is this going to work? You know, it was a little bit touch and go at times just because of all of the challenges that she had. And I think it was just that determination, like you said, true grit. And I have a very wise friend who said dogs are sent to help us. You know, they are sent to teach us something that they get us through. And I think it was right. You could argue that she wasn't the right dog for me at the right time. But on the flip side, with hindsight, you could argue that yes, life was really difficult for a time, but she was just what I needed at that time. Focus, you know, had that breaking that big insurmountable list of issues down into manageable pieces and working on each one. You know, consistency, you know, really early on, I think on those days where it was difficult, I think my mental ups and downs, you know, they really didn't help her. She was a dog trying to find trust. She was trying to find her place. You know, she was in a different country, in a different house. So actually, it was just about moderating my moods, which has then helped me, you know, become a better, more balanced person going forward. But yes, just consistency, just, you know, not losing your patience when you just want to go, oh my God, nothing works.
Yeah.
Trying different techniques. So I had advice from quite a few different dog trainers because nothing works the same for every dog. So there was that element of finding what works for Nellie. But yes, it's definitely worth that sort of focused attention to get her where she is today, which is a lovely, well-balanced dog with, you know, I mean, I did look through at the list a little while ago. I went on a big holiday and I just wanted to make sure I was prepared in case anything happened. And I went through the list that I had kind of got originally and then compared it to where she is now. And they're just, you wouldn't even think it was the same dog.
So when you say list, is that the I'm letting you borrow my dog while I go away and you've got to look out for all these things? Is that what you're talking about? And then the list has got much smaller. What's on this list? What is it?
So the original list was the very first time I took a dog to dog training, which was about 5 months after I got her. And to prepare the dog trainer, I had to answer certain questions. What did she do? What she didn't do well? What were the kind of triggers to some of the behaviours, if you knew what they were? And so you had to write down all of the things you wanted to address. And the list was really quite significant in terms of the things I wanted to address. And then in terms of, it was a bit like, I've run out of paper now. Can I have an extra sheet? But then the other one was more, and I don't want people to be morbid, but it's like, if something happens to me and she needs to find a new home, what does that new owner need to know about her that's going to make that transition a lot easier for both of them? And so it was writing down, you know, what she likes, what are her favourite things, what are the triggers, you know, what kind of lifestyle does she fit into? So it just sort of meant that she would probably get paired with the best people going forward. I say because she comes from the Dogs Trust, she would have to go back to the Dogs Trust, and you know they do a great job of identifying, you know, what that dog's environment suits. But obviously, if they don't have that information, and I'm the one that knows that the best, so I just created a little sheet saying my name is Nellie, you know. So, so if the worst happened, you can hand that over, and you've given them the best snapshot of her life at that point.
And that kind of makes me think about when you took her on. I mean, if you knew all of the things that you would need to deal with, I mean, did they even know all of the behaviours that she was showing up? Because that does require the selection of someone who is going to stay the pace with her, because ultimately more foster homes, more forever, the more change that she'd go through, the more distressing it would have been. So what did they know about her when they handed her over to you?
So they had the information that was given to them from the people that surrendered her. So they knew that she was a working dog. There wasn't much more information about that element. They obviously do a lot of work with them when they first come into the site. So they, I think they potentially, see whether they're good with children, whether they're good with cats, whether they're good with other dogs. So they knew that she'd gone out into foster because she was so anxious in the kennels with the noises and her kennel mate that she'd been hurting herself. So she's got a few scars left from that. So they knew that she wasn't great with other dogs. So she was in foster. The foster people had written a little diary about what they'd discovered about her in the time they'd been looking after her. But they did tell me that she wasn't great with other dogs. They did tell me that she may never be able to walk off the lead. I think the place that I was in my head at the time, that kind of went, and perhaps,
Yeah.
I think, if you genuinely knew the dog was never going to get any better, she wouldn't have been the right dog at the time. Clearly, it couldn't take her to work if she didn't like people, dogs, and different
100%.
environments, noises, change, traveling, all of those kind of things. But, I think with grit and determination and her persistence and that, and that taking the chance, trusting and being brave, it's absolutely worked out. But you're right, it could have been a different story.
And when I think about Nellie and you, and I put that within a work context, I've worked with people who have had bad experiences with previous employers, and they've had perhaps different or perhaps unkind experiences in life. The commitment and the compassion that others can show them can help them relearn, unlearn, soothe, repair, prepare themselves for another life if that's what they choose to do. So I think it's full credit to you with the compassion that you've shown her, because when I see her now and I think about how she was, we can go for a walk and she's off lead and she'll come back eventually, and she's gentle and she's very disciplined. I just think, isn't that a great showcase for how humans and dogs and humans can be? That was quite a long sentence there. I'm very sorry about that. So is that a question? I think the question here is, what do you see in your journey with Nellie that you might also see in the workplace? I think that might be the question. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good reflection, and I think it's a really fair point. I think there are those elements where she's gone through a tough time, and you've got to, I guess, work on that trust. You've got to have trust, and when you have trust, you can do absolutely amazing things. And I think that's reflected in the workplace as well. So people have gone through bad experiences. Maybe it's the environment, maybe it's the staff, maybe it's the managers, but it's that, small steps, that learning about that individual. It's learning what drives them. What is it that they need to become better? It's not just chipping away going, you didn't do that very well. It's like, well, how can we make it better next time? What are your strengths? And I think that's a really key thing for teams, isn't it? And just that little positive reinforcement, and it's, you've done something really well, and recognizing that. And I think Charlie, who you might have remembered from before Nellie, we took him to dog training, and he would learn something and it'd be fantastic. And then we'd move on to the next thing. And then he'd just completely unlearn the first thing. Nellie doesn't do that actually, but Charlie, my previous dog, he'd just unlearn it. And so actually he never stopped going to dog training. He really enjoyed it. He liked learning things, but if you took him away from that environment, he'd just forget them all. So I think it's that constantly learning, positive affirmation of everything. You can't get complacent, because you just lose whatever it is you've built up if you just take it for granted. So I think that's what that kind of dog training has taught me, is if someone's doing really well, tell them they're doing really well, every day, if that's what it is, because actually you just can't take those kind of things for granted. And just building people up, you can just do amazing things if you've got that trust and you believe in them and they believe in you, and they know that whatever you're doing is right for them. You can do amazing things.
I'm with you 100%, particularly on the positive reinforcement. I do think that there's a massive trick we're all missing in every, and I put myself definitely here as the guilty party of being more critical than being positive. Certainly in the last 5 years or so, recognizing the positive things and really kind of making those the highlight rather than criticism all of the time of you didn't do that and you haven't done this, rather than thank you so much for doing this and this, because it gets the balance right. No, absolutely. So I want to bring Smudge into this story. So Smudge was Joe's parents' dog, and then Smudge came to live with us when we shared a house. How many years ago was that? Just to tell me the story.
20 odd.
20 odd years ago. Tell me the story of Smudge, because I don't even remember what breed he was. What breed was Smudge the dog?
Well, Smudge was what we call a Heinz 57. So I think there was a little bit of everything in there. He was he came from a litter that my mum's friend had. It was an unexpected litter, so I'm not sure they know who the father of the litter was, but there was definitely Spaniel in there and some other things. Yeah. And then, of course, because Dad then came into the mix, it was, kind of an even more of a mix. And it was just trying to find good homes for all of those puppies that had come along unexpectedly. We were just about to move to Lincolnshire at the time from the home counties, and thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a dog again? We took on one of the puppies. I had a lot of responsibility, and do remember the early days of having to take him out to learn how to do his potty breaks. Oh my goodness. Just out and just waiting till he goes, and then bring him back in. I remember showing him to a horse for the very first time. I got wet then because he got very frightened. So that was a potty break that I hadn't expected. But yeah, so he'd come, and he'd been part of the family in Lincolnshire for a very long time. And then obviously when I moved down and started my very first proper job as a recreation ranger, it just seemed like a really good fit to have him and come stay with us. And my mum and dad were just about moving house at that time. So it was good that he kind of was out of that situation of lots of change and transition, and instead came to live in the chaos that was Cheshunt.
Yeah. And I just remember you again, like going out every day with Smudge, and he'd have all these really brilliant long walks, and it would be the source of conversation when we'd be walking him in the park. But then it was interesting, wasn't it? Because my parents had a dog, and their dog Prince had passed away, and my dad was absolutely adamant that they got another dog, and my mum was absolutely adamant that they absolutely did not get a dog. And you remember I said, well, maybe, because we were getting promoted and whatnot, and work was getting a little bit harder, and while you were still taking Smudge out, it was a bit like, we might need, perhaps they might think about taking Smudge on. That was my parents. So I remember taking Smudge down to my mum and dad's, and my dad said, oh, what an amazing dog. This is fantastic. And my mum saying, we don't want another dog. And I said, okay, not to worry. If you just want to have a little chat with him, I'm going to go down the road. And so by the time I came back from down the road, Mum and Dad had said, oh, if we could have him, that would be great. Maybe just on a trial. We don't know yet. And then that was the next stage of Smudge's life, was with my mum and dad.
I think it was the right thing, and I think it's doing the right thing for the dog and the people at the time, and that can either be in a kind of like home domestic context or a work context. But yeah, I think I was looking to get a full-time job, and I was going to be moving away, and I think with a dog you need a support network. You don't necessarily need a partner, but you need other people that can help. And obviously, as part of that organisation, we had that great network of other staff and colleagues who would pick Smudge up, take him to work. You had that support. Obviously, you could feed him, I could feed him. He could get as many meals out of us that he could possibly do.
Which he often did.
He did a fantastic job of saying that I've not been fed. Yeah, the amount of times I'd get back and I'd be like, oh, he's had 2 meals then, has he? But and I think it was that I was going to be moving on, and where I was moving to, I didn't have that support network in place. And he had just got to an age, hadn't he? When I first took him, I said, let's cycle into the office, and he'd be falling apart. So the first day, this arm would be broken. The next day, this one would be like, oh, this one's really tired. And he got really fit and in shape, but essentially he was getting a little bit older, and he really just wanted to be somebody's sort of lapdog, didn't he? He wanted a bit of luxury. He didn't want to be a ranger's dog running around the place for hours on end. He just got to that stage, and I think it was the right thing for him, and it was the right thing for everyone else as well. So he just went on to an even better life, really, at that stage for him. So I just think it worked really well.
It was definitely retirement. It was like a retirement villa for him. I used to get cards. Actually, I can't believe I'm admitting this. My mum and dad would send me cards, like birthday cards or Christmas cards or whatnot, and they would have got Smudge's foot in some mud, and then they'd basically put his footprint, his little paw print, in my card saying, "From Smudge." So he was definitely an addition to their family when they were down there. Down on the south coast.
I can imagine his face while they were doing that as well. It would have been one of those, like, I'll tolerate this because I love you, but you are a nutter.
I'm with you. I can actually visualise that now as well. Oh,
it's that tolerance that they have for us, don't they? They have the tolerance. They think this thing you're doing is kind of strange and weird, but because I love you and because life's good, like, how much does it hurt me to just go along with this?
Yeah, but make it quick, because quite frankly, this is ridiculous. Yeah, no, I got it in one. Jo, let's close up with what a dog means in a human's life from your point of view. What does it mean?
I think it's just a fantastic companion. It's a fantastic creature to share the journey with, share your adventures with. I think they are great at teaching you how to be a better person. There are just so many things that you just like, be more dog. That should be the thing. That should be the motto. Be more dog. They just teach you to be better, not to dwell on the negatives, just to like ignore those little perceived injustices. Just concentrate on what's important. They don't have a lot of control over what they do. They don't have a big say. I mean, they do trainers and they do get their own way a lot of the time, but generally they don't have control. But look, she's living her best life. And I think it's that you can't control everything, but you can control how you respond to it. And I think that's what dogs do. They just kind of live with what they've got and make the best of it, and they live their best life.
Wow, that is profound, Jo. Thanks.
It's okay.
Now, are you going to give her a couple of treats so that those that are watching the video can get a little bit more of a look at her? And for those of you that are joining us on audio, you never know, she might make some scratchy, whiny sounds depending on what Jo's about to give her.
I love these. These are our Slipper and Biscuit flavour, which I think is just great. It's a gimmick, isn't it? But
that is
Slipper
fantastic.
And Biscuit, yeah. You can also get a Postman flavour, but I thought that was a bit cool, and I like my Postman.
What is that brand, for goodness sake? Oh, here she comes.
This is amazing.
Oh,
Ossis.
Okay. What's
and that's
this?
actually how it's pronounced, Ossis, and it's a little W, and she loves them.
So what Jo is showing is a container where the brand is called What's This? And that's obviously got all the goodies in it. Now, also, you give her ice cream, Jo.
Yeah.
Oh, there she is. Hi, Nellie. You give her ice cream. I have a feeling. Why am I thinking that you've given her beer? Yeah, dog ice cream. Do I think that you've given her dog beer?
I think I tried once Pawsecco, which I got from the Pawsecco. But to be honest, I think she just prefers a little bit of milk. She's not lactose intolerant, so milk is much more down her street. But yeah, she used to eat raw carrot, and then I'd read somewhere, that steamed vegetables are really good for them because they've got lots of nutrients in them. And although their dog food is pretty well balanced, they can lose some of the nutrients in the process of heating and compaction. So I sort of do these little portions of steamed veg every now and then when I have mine. But now she doesn't eat raw carrot anymore. She wants steamed carrot. So.
Oh my gosh, if there was a Waitrose dog, Nellie would be the Waitrose dog. And for those of you that are overseas, Waitrose is like an upper end supermarket. So that's fabulous. Jo, it's been brilliant to see you, and it's been great to have a conversation. There's some real golden nuggets in there that are invaluable from the perspective of how humans should be a bit more like dogs. There's a bunch of stuff in there on really how far you have gone to bring Nellie to where she is now. Your dedication, your passion. And if we just brought just an ounce of that to our human relationships, I think we'd see them flourish, honestly. So thank you so much for being our guest.
You're very welcome. Lovely to talk to you.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
See you later. Bye.
So that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in. If we've not connected already, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there most days. You'll find me under CXEI Sandra. And also, if you want to find out a bit more about my work, then you can pop along to my website, www.eievolution.com. One final thing, and in the spirit of customer experience and feedback, I wonder if you might consider leaving a review on Spotify. I'll leave that one with you. So until the next time, be well and be pawsome. Ta-ra!